Hello and welcome to What the Faux Travel Podcast with Nick and Amy. This is Series 4, Episode 7, and this one is all about Portugal.
Hey kids, thank you so much for joining us again. You guys are so good to us, always regularly listening to the show. Thank you for joining us, thanks for your support. Let's get into Portugal, but actually, I say that. Before we get into it, as we usually do, let's give you guys a little roundup of where we are. And this one's special because this is the last Where Are We Now on our big round the world trip.
Oh my goodness. So in like 4 to 5 days, we are going to be home in the UK, which is really scary.
What? We've been away for, well, it will be 1 year and 2 months. And almost around the world trip, pretty much everywhere apart from like Asia and Australia. Even a little bit of Africa was thrown in there with Egypt. It's been mad, but we will be talking about the trip as a whole. Any regrets, favourite parts, worst parts, what would we do differently if we did it again. We'll do our final and third long-term travel mini episode coming in the next month or two, so we'll round everything off properly. But right now we're in Chicago. We're finishing our trip in the USA, and tomorrow we fly to New York for our final destination.
It's the last one, so yeah, very scary but very excited to get home, see family, friends and eat some home comfort food.
Absolutely, yeah. A lot to look forward to. A lot to be scared of, but a lot to look forward to.
Guys, so in this episode, we're going to be talking all things Portugal. So, port wine, Lisbon, Porto, surfing and blue and white tiles, my favourite things in the world. But we're also going to be doing game show facts as usual, language lessons with João. We'll be telling you about the number 28 tram, Belém, pastel de nata, bacalhau cakes, fado music, history, culture, a place called Sintra, free walk-in tours, and we're also going to be talking to Nick's uncle because he visited us there. And of course, we can't leave you without a game, but today's game is very tiny. We're going to be playing the 1-minute game with my friend Adam, and we're also going to hear from this guy.
Craveiro numa água furtada, cheira bem, cheira a Lisboa.
Right, let's crack on with shout outs, and we have some positives and a negative today, which doesn't normally happen on the show. I think this is the second negative that we've ever read out, so bad times at What the Faux at the moment.
No, we'll start with the positive messages. Yeah, we have had some nice messages, including this message from The Sum of Travel on Instagram, and they are Addy and Shelley. They said, "Hey Nick and Amy, been listening to your podcast for a while. Love the chemistry between you guys and the facts and the games that you play on the show. Thank you very much for getting in touch.
We also do have a whole load of chemistry since we are married."
Exactly. You can't make up that chemistry, can you? We also heard from Colin and Lynn on Instagram. Thank you very much for getting in touch. As well as lots of nice messages from our listeners from the USA, because we are here now. We have had a few of you say, you're near my state, blah, blah, it'd be good to meet up. This has been a quick, rushed trip across the USA. We've only done LA, Chicago, and New York. If we had longer, well, actually, I'll tell you what, the original plan was supposed to be big, but we run out of time and money. We wanted to be in an RV, a camper, and go across the states and do a route dictated by you guys. So you could say, come to my hometown, I'll show you around. It would have been a great way to meet a lot of you guys and see parts of the USA we'd never normally see. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible, but maybe next time we're here.
Yeah, and if you have any ideas or, if you own an RV company and want to help us out with that, then you can get in touch.
That was actually the main problem. we couldn't find any companies that wanted to work with us and give us an RV. So it would have been great to meet you all, but thanks for getting in touch. Sorry that we couldn't. I'm also going to stick on the positive side of things, and something that I wanted to mention to you guys because I think it's very relevant. I have a recommendation for all you travellers out there, a book that I've been reading on our travels called Never Go Full Pie. Pie spelled P-A-I. Never Go Full Pie. It's a novel book about these two guys who are travelling around Vietnam and a bit of Europe as well. Great backpacking book. I'm really enjoying it. I'd recommend it to anyone that likes travelling and reading. And if, just so you can find it online, it's by Jeffrey Eng. And I thought Eng was short for something, but it's E-N-G. Jeffrey Eng. Never go full pie. I'm really enjoying it. So let's move on to something less positive. Hate mail.
You've got no friends. If you want some, I'll give it you.
We haven't heard that jingle for a while.
Thank God. Yeah, I know. It's not often we get some hate mail, but to be fair, what we make, not everyone's going to like it. We're never going to please everyone. But I quite respect this person. I like this review. So it's on iTunes. Anyone can go look at it if you want to. 1 star. Title of it is Not That Good. And it's by Vasborn. I think that's his name or her name. And it just simply says, just listen to Czech Amp Slovakia. I think you were trying to say and there. Just listen to the Czech and Slovakia episode. Sadly, not very good. These two are clueless.
Well, there you go. I mean, we should just stop the podcast, really, because if we don't know what we're talking about and we're clueless, then we should stop travelling altogether.
I think Vasborn has got a point. That was one of our early episodes. Who knows? Maybe it was crap, but...
Was that series 1?
Yeah, series 1.
Oh, that's fair enough then. We probably were clueless.
Anyway, so there's hate mail.
You've got no friends. If you want some, I'll give it you.
Okay, right, let's move on to Portugal. We need to start with game show facts. Tell us about Portugal, Nick.
Right, here we go. I'm going to educate all of you. There's going to be lots of interesting facts you never knew about Portugal. Vamos lá! Portugal, a country with a rich history of seafaring and discovery. It looks out from the Iberian Peninsula in Western Europe towards the Atlantic Ocean. The Portuguese started to colonize the world in the 15th century. Their empire spread across South America, Africa, and Asia. Portugal handed back its last overseas territory in 1999. That was Macau, which went to China. The population of Portugal today is around 10 million, and the capital city is Lisbon, Lisboa. For almost half of the 20th century, Portugal was a dictatorship in which Antonio de Oliveira Salazar was the key figure. The dictatorship was brought to an end in 1974, and Portugal became a democracy. Portugal produces 70% of the world's cork exports. Portugal and Britain have the oldest diplomatic alliance in the world. The Anglo-Portuguese alliance was signed in 1373 and is in force until this day. Both countries entered wars to defend each other, including the UK entering the Iberian Peninsula War and Portugal entering World War I. Portugal remained neutral in World War II, but allowed the UK to use their air bases. Portugal is one of the world's top surf spots. It has a coastline that spans 500 miles and has 364 days of surf a year. The biggest wave to ever be surfed ever in the world was recorded off Nazaré Beach. Portugal abolished slavery all the way back in 1761. That's half a century before Britain, France, Spain, or the United States. And finally, Portugal decriminalised the use of all drugs in 2001. Portugal decided to treat possession and use of small quantities of these drugs as a public health issue, not a criminal one. Getting caught with drugs now means a small fine and maybe a referral to a treatment program, not jail time. The result? Now hardly anyone dies from overdosing.
What a positive end to game show facts. Not really anyone's dying from overdosing.
That's what we want in the world. That is interesting, isn't it? You'd think decriminalising all drugs, some people might say that means the whole country are going to be on drugs and they're going to make the situation much worse, but they've actually made it much better.
That is normally my fun fact to kind of pull out about Portugal. I think it's incredible. They really had a drug crisis there and they solved it by making it legal, which is so forward thinking. And I think a lot of countries and governments would be quite scared to do it, hence why they haven't. But yeah, it's really forward thinking.
Yeah, and now people can come forward to the authorities and say, I have a problem, I need help, and they won't get in trouble.
So very good, Portugal. We like it. So let's move on to language lessons with Jean. I think I'm saying that
Very
right.
good. I would say João, but Jean.
Jean.
Very good.
Which is like the Portuguese version of John, the name. But yeah, he is our walking tour guide, which you'll hear from later in the show. But let's kick off with language lessons with him, starting with the word hello.
Olá.
And hi. Because, for example, in Brazil, they say oi. Can you say oi here?
Yeah, but it's a very Brazilian thing to say.
Okay.
Oi, yeah, very
Okay.
long.
Yeah.
Oi, yeah.
Okay, we'll definitely talk about the difference between here and Brazil in a minute, but how do you say thank you?
Thank you is obrigado, yeah.
And that's different for men and women.
Yeah, exactly. So obrigado is if a man is saying it, so it depends on who says it. Obrigado for men, obrigada for women.
Okay, and how do you say please?
Por favor,
How do you say I want this?
gostaria de.
Gostaria
Queria,
de.
yeah.
Yes and no?
Sim, no.
And now has that really interesting sound that we don't have in English with the over the A, it's kind of like a squiggly line.
Yeah.
Can you
It
explain that
depends-
sound? Like, how do you make that sound?
Those are nasal sounds, so you have to send the air to your nose, As kids in school, we would have to cover our nose, and if we felt like air was kind of being stopped, it meant we were doing it correctly. So that was the way we did it in school. So it depends. If there's an A with the till and an O, it's ão. So that's how my name is pronounced. It's João. If it's an A and an E, it's ein. But it's all nasal sounds.
How do you order a beer?
Quero uma cerveja ou queria uma cerveja.
Brilliant. Okay, and then can we just finish by asking you what is the difference between Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese?
Well, basically, it's all Portuguese. It's kind of funny because sometimes we distinguish it, and you say you speak Brazilian, and Brazilians get really offended by this. But it's pretty much the same language. But the essential difference is that it's more open than we have it here.
So you can understand each other.
Yeah. We have a lot of soap operas that are made in Brazil, so we understand a lot of it. They have a harder time understanding what we say.
Oh, that's interesting. So maybe it's just as similar to English and American, do you think?
Yeah, I would say, it's more or less in the same spirit, yeah.
One more quick one. Just because we're on the topic of Brazil and Portugal, what do you think you guys think of each other? So, like, for example, do you see Brazilians as, like, really cool and fashionable, or do they see Portuguese as really cool and fashionable? Like, what do you think of each other, or do you feel like you're brothers?
I'm sure the Brazilians don't see us as cool and fashionable. They see us a bit as maybe uptight. But it's funny, with this job as a tour guide, you get a lot of different inputs of what Brazilians think when they're here. And they associate this with some kind of lost heritage that they don't have. They don't preserve their country as much, their heritage. So when they come here, they feel, I can connect this with Brazil, and they like it. But how we see Brazilians, very lively, very fun, very crazy, very wild, a little bit too much sometimes. But I feel like we're very close culturally. And we've been having a lot of Brazilian immigration, and I think it's very good for our country. Gives it a little bit more of a warm feeling. I think it's just very good for us in general.
I would agree with him there. I do think the Portuguese think of Brazilians being quite wild, or too wild. Yeah. And I can see why they think it, but I love Brazilians. They're fun.
Absolutely. But I also agreed with what he said about, Brazilians go to Portugal and they find some sort of lost heritage, because even one of our friends, Gustavo, that lives in Sao Paulo, he's kind of always dreamt about living in Portugal, and he's doing it. He's moving there next month. So I also agree with what João was saying there.
João. I think it's a brilliant language. I think I learned a lot of my Portuguese in Brazil, so I really do understand them a lot better than I would someone from Portugal, but it's really difficult to understand them in Portugal. It's fast. They're very short and quick with their words, where in Brazil, like he was saying, they really elongate their words, like the word oi, which means hi. They'll be like oi. But a good example is maybe saying please. So in Portugal, they say it more like por favor, like really quick. But then in Brazil, it's like por favor. Like they really elongate it.
And I also think the Portuguese sometimes sound like Eastern European or Russian. They speak a lot like shush, 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 shush. And I just think, what? Like, to me, that doesn't sound like a Latin language at all, but it's just their accent.
I love it. And I love Portugal. And you'll find that out in this episode. So let's briefly go over our trip. So we started in Lisbon, which is the capital of Portugal. We then drove north towards Porto and we stopped in a place called Nazare Beach. I think that's how you say it. Nazare. And Nick, you said in your game show facts why that place is famous.
I'm glad you were listening for once to my game show facts.
Yeah, I was listening.
When you said Lisbon's the capital of Portugal, I'm like, yeah, no, I've already said this, Amy. Were you listening? So it's famous for big waves, and the biggest wave ever to be surfed was here in Portugal, of all places.
And we'll talk about that in a bit. But then, we headed to Porto and then drove all the way back to Lisbon as well. So we kind of did a bit of a circle and picked up a hitchhiker on the way.
Yeah, South Korean guy. Wasn't very talkative. Didn't even say thank you.
He just got out the car and we were like, cool, mate. Yeah, don't worry.
But, we paid it back because we've hitchhiked a lot as well.
But we said thank you. So our advice, if you do hitchhike, talk to the people you're in the car with, make them know that you're not a killer, and then, say thank you at the end. Obrigada,
Exactly, make the effort. I know we're in Portugal, but he didn't even speak English. Rude. Joking.
Not everybody has to speak English, we're aware.
Yeah. I think it's worth mentioning we didn't go to the south coast because this was in the winter. But we'll talk about it later. Many times as a child, Amy went to the south coast, the Algarve. Algarve.
The
Algarve, yeah, which is supposed to be very nice for a summer holiday. But like Amy said, that's what we did, mainly cities. And let's start, really. Lisbon, that's the first place we arrived. What were your first impressions when we arrived?
It is my favourite capital city in Europe, for sure. We love Copenhagen. We love Budapest as well, or Budapest, if you want to be local about it. But my goodness,
don't say it like that. I hate that.
Lisboa, can I say that?
No, because if you're going to go to Paris for the weekend, what do you say? I'm going to Paris. You don't say that.
Some people say that.
No, you don't.
They do.
Don't be stupid.
Okay, right, Lisbon then. Let's call it Lisbon. Oh my God, guys, I love this city so much. It's beautiful. It has history. The food is insane. Like, so freaking good. I think even if you haven't been to Portugal, I'm sure you've heard of pastel de nata, which is like little custard tarts, which will blow your mind. Like, the first bite will just send you into like oblivion. It's incredible.
Yeah, it will change your life completely. We're going to be talking very specifically about the food soon. But you're right, when we first arrived, we just thought like, this is one of the best places in the world, didn't we?
Yeah.
'Cause we'd just been around the Middle East and Turkey, and we'd landed in Portugal, and it felt like we were back in a familiar culture. Amy's always liked Latin culture. I like it as well. And you're right, it's beautiful, the buildings, the hills, the trams. As soon as we arrived, I thought, we are going to love it here.
The only thing was, we were there in December and it was freezing, wasn't it?
It was cold. I remember there was one day we managed to get a little bit of sun and we were sat outside drinking a couple of beers. But most of the time, it was December. Like, I'm fine with that. And it's windy because you're right by the Atlantic Ocean. So, we still had a great time despite the weather. Yeah, and
I think that's a true testament to a country or a city, is that if you can go there in weather that you don't like and still have a brilliant time, then, it's a fantastic place. Like, I do like winter weather, but it was cold. Like, we had the fire on in our apartment, and even then we were like still cold. But yeah, it's just such a fantastic city. It's just one of those places that you don't need to have anything planned. You can just walk around and you'll have a great time. I got a great bum when I was there because there's
Do you want to explain?
Should we explain my Lisbon bum that we were talking about? Because there's so many hills there. I really got a good glute workout, and I had a peachy bum by the end of the 2 weeks, so I was really happy with that. We'll put the picture
up on our Instagram. You can judge for yourself.
But yeah, no, it was just so lovely. So what did we do when we were in Lisbon?
It was just so. I agree. Lisbon, stunning. It's beautiful, but no, it was breathtaking. Couldn't get enough of it. We're still recording. Right, we'll get into exactly like everything we got up to, but we're going to start with an interview with a walking tour guide in Lisbon, because he's going to explain a lot about the city and things you can do there and stuff like that. Before we get into the interview, though, we asked him to introduce himself because his name is very long and very Portuguese.
Pedro David Almeida Rebelo Soares.
Yeah, I'm glad we got him to record that because we wouldn't be able to say it properly.
Thanks for that, Pedro. So we started our chat with Pedro by asking what we need to eat when we're in Portugal.
Of course, the codfish. I mean, we have more than 400 ways of cooking the codfish. We just love it. It has been around for 7 centuries. Actually, the earliest document regarding codfish has to do with Peter I, King of Portugal, and Edward II of England, where due to the allegiance of Portugal and England in the 14th century, he allows the Portuguese to capture codfish in the British shores. So codfish is a great source of protein. Back then in the times, people didn't have that much fish or meat to eat. And I mean, if they had only that to eat, they would have to be creative somehow. And I suppose that was one of the reasons why so many recipes were born, especially after the age of explorations, where so many different spices and products start to come in here as well. So you have a lot of codfish recipes to try around here. It's definitely our national dish, although we have a lot of other fishes which are great, and the meat is great in here as well. For example, we have a very famous stew which is called cozida portuguesa, the Portuguese stew, with a lot of chorizo, ham, cow's beef, pork, vegetables and potato as well.
And just while we're talking about food, so we want to steer our listeners away from tourist traps. And on the tour you were telling us about the codfish pastries that have cheese in them. Just to let you know, you are allowed to swear on the podcast.
Okay, so what do you think of these?
Well, it's just fucking stupid, basically. It's a total tourist trap, okay? Don't go for the codfish pastry with melted cheese on the inside. Don't go for the sardines in cans that cost more than €2, okay? Even if they put your name on it or birth dates or so. And don't go definitely for these shops that have a lot of lights and look like Disneylands, because these are what I like to call silly shops, and usually they are a chain of shops, even when they have different names that belongs to the same crazy genius that had these ideas. The real codfish pastry has only codfish, potato, some bits of onion maybe inside, and that's basically it. It's fried, okay, and has nothing to do with putting cheese over it, overpricing it and such, and we don't eat that at all.
So I want to know, why is Portugal better than Spain?
Well, I mean, that's not even a question, you know. It's just, it is just obvious, okay? Let me be fair, I really like Spain as well, okay? I mean, they have a lot of culture, beautiful cities, a lot of diversity as well. Portugal just happens to be better. First of all, we have a more beautiful language, okay? They only use open vowels, and we have a more broader phonetic, for example, okay? And Spanish people, they are constantly performing in a theater. We are what I like to call the sad Spanish, melancholic, nostalgic. This gives us a more deep understanding of the things as well. And the weather also, it's sunny like in Spain, maybe a little bit less sunny and a little bit less heat around here. Makes the weather more mild also. And we are closer to the Atlantic shore as well, while they are closer to the Mediterranean. And also the architecture tends to be quite different from Spain, although they also have the tiles culture, especially in the south. We have it all throughout our own country, fulfilling the buildings, and it's something that we love as well. And then the food. Spain has great food, but we have amazing food, I think. More diverse.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to come on your tour, how can they find you and where should they go?
So, to find our tour, just have to type in Lisbon Chill Out Tour on Google or Free Walking Tours on Google, and we are usually in the first options. We are the Lisbon Chill Out Tour. We have tours every day in the winter schedule at 10 and 3 p.m. in the summer schedule at 10 and 4:30 p.m. By the way, I also have a music tour. You can also check. We have 3 tours: the normal tour, the literature tour, and the music tour.
Well, on that topic, to entice people to come to the music tour, you've actually got quite a good singing voice. Can you sing a traditional Portuguese song for us, please?
Of course I can. I'll sing the one that I usually sing in the tours, which is a fado, which is called Cheira Bem, Cheira a Lisboa, which means smells good, smells like Lisbon. Craveiro numa água furtada, cheira bem, cheira a Lisboa. Uma rosa a florir na tapada, cheira bem, cheira a Lisboa. A fragata que se ergue na proa, a varina que tem em passar, cheiram bem porque são de Lisboa. Lisboa tem cheiro de flores e de mar.
Thank you to Pedro for A, the interview, and B, the incredible singing at the end.
Funny, talented guy. Very good tour guide.
And I completely agreed with everything he said on the tour. He was having a lot of jabs at Spain, hence why we asked the question about who's better, Portugal or Spain. But it was just a lot of joking, nothing serious in it. Although I do think Portugal is better than Spain. I'm definitely more of a Portuguese girl.
I think I do agree. I enjoyed Portugal when I was there, but I've only been once, and I've been to Spain like 15 times. Now, I wouldn't keep going back to Spain if I didn't like it. So in Spain's defense, it's pretty good. British people love Spain. We all go there for our holidays, so can't complain with Spain.
But then again, my family holidays when I was a child were always to Portugal. So, maybe that's why I'm more of a Portuguese girl. I've been to Spain plenty of times as well. But, yeah, definitely more of a Portugal girl. And one of the main reasons why I am is because of the tiles. Now, Pedro mentioned this in the tour, but I'm sure a lot of you know this. Like, even if you haven't been to Portugal, you would have seen these pictures maybe on Instagram. But the tiles, and by that I mean like the outside of the houses are tiled. It's the traditional way that their houses are, and they are just beautiful.
Stunning.
Like the most beautiful tiles I've ever seen. Now these tiles actually date back to like the 13th century, and fun fact, they have like an Arabic descent.
Really?
Who knew?
That is a fun fact.
They are traditionally like blue and white, and they're called azulejos. But I think I'm saying that with a Spanish accent, so maybe it's like azulejos. Maybe. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I do apologise. I'm not fluent in Portuguese. But yeah, they're just beautiful tiles, and they're actually really expensive now. Like when we get home, we're looking at building our own home, which sounds a bit ambitious since we're not builders, but it's something I want to incorporate in the home, like maybe in the bathroom, have some really Portuguese tiles. I just think they look stunning, don't they?
100%. Whether it's like a whole wall covered in tiles or just a little feature with tiles, it looks beautiful. And all the tiles make Lisbon, well, all of Portugal, because we saw them in Porto. The train station there is stunning. It makes the whole city look incredible.
It does. And if you are heading to Porto, the railway station you will have to go to, and if you go on the walk-in tour, they take you there anyway. It's the São Bento railway station. It's just the most beautiful place we went to in Portugal, I think.
I agree. Work of art.
Just like all four walls surrounding you in this massive antique railway station. All these tiles, but they're telling the history of Portugal, and your guide there will like take you through the different ages. But yeah, they're just so stunning, and it's such a like pinnacle point of the culture there that I think like it's impossible to go there and not appreciate it. So yeah, tiles, it's a big thing in Portugal. And also it kind of matches Spain a little bit. The south of Spain, they have a lot of tiles there that are blue and white, but again, I'm siding with Portugal. I think the Portuguese ones are better.
Oh, Spain is taking a beating today.
We haven't done a Spain episode. We should really.
Oh, well, no, we should, and we will for sure. No, there's like I said before, there's a lot to love about Spain. Absolutely.
But Portugal's better.
well, maybe I don't know. Maybe we need another trip. You see, when I've been to Spain, it's always just been the south coast just to relax by a pool. I haven't really got into the culture. But the one time we went to the north of Spain, we were well impressed.
No, we did that road trip, like Barcelona, Madrid.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Zaragoza. That was years ago.
See, it's forgettable, Spain. You wouldn't forget you've been to Portugal, would you?
All right, we'll stop slating Spain because we're talking about Portugal. We'll move on from tiles just to talk about food again. What Pedro was saying, yes, bacala, like the cod fish. Bacalao. That's a place, bacalao, isn't it, in Mexico? Bacalao, codfish cakes. Amazing, delicious, incredible. Like Amy said earlier, the pastel de nata, the little like egg custard tarts. You can find them all over Lisbon, and we had some in Porto. Normally about €1 each. You could eat, or I could easily eat 3 or 4 of them like every day. So delicious. Maybe you had like one a day.
Yeah, it's because I'm kind of dairy intolerant. Like they do make me a bit sick, but like I couldn't go a day without eating one. They were just that good. And going back to the bacalhau cakes as well. So bacalhau is cod. That's the Portuguese word for it. But I don't think you'll ever see them be called cod cakes. They are bacalhau cakes. Yeah. But I don't like fish, and I loved these cakes. They were really nice, mixed with potato. They're kind of little croquettes, and they're really good. Really good.
Speaking of croquettes, I think it's a permanent structure. There's a food market in Lisbon called the Time Out Food Market, and you can get pretty much everything there. Obviously, mostly Portuguese food. And there's some croquettes, like little potato cakes, different flavours like caramelized onion and cheese. Is that right? And
there was
some
a curry
Indian
one.
Curry flavour. These croquettes, best I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, we actually went back quite a few times, and Nick's family visited us there, and then or his like auntie and uncle, and then his mum came, and then my friend Adam came, and like each time we were like taking them back to these croquettes because they're just stunning. So yeah, if you do want to go there, go to the Time Out Market, and it's like a luxury artisan product kind of place, selling lots of food, alcohol, you know, wines, all of this, all from Portugal. But it's in a massive rectangle, and the croquettes place is on one of the corners, and it's not the inside of it, it's the outside. So you have a square in the middle. It's like a plaza that you can walk around, but it's also you can walk around the outside of the square. So it's just on one of the corners. And I've never wanted to recommend a food so much on this podcast.
Wow.
Please, if you go to Lisbon, eat those croquettes and eat the pastel de nata. They are incredible.
You're welcome, guys. You can thank us later.
Let's talk about things to do in Lisbon as well, because the 28 tram is very famous. So these trams that go around the city, they're very antique, old style trams. They're beautiful, but they're actually working trams as well. They look like they could just be for tourists, but you know, the locals use them as well. They just work as any normal tram. But the number 28 is the one that does a really good circle around Lisbon, takes you up and down the hills.
Yeah, so you can just ride the tram, just sit, enjoy the view, and while you're on this, like you said, very antique but beautiful, like iconic piece of transport.
Can you remember how much the tram was?
No, but I think like for one journey, maybe like €2 or €3, something like that. €2.50.
Yeah,
Something
guys,
like
you
that.
need to remember that we were there almost a year ago now. It's taken a while for us to get this episode out. But yeah, it wasn't expensive. It's definitely affordable and a great way to see the city.
Agreed. Now, we got on the tram. I don't think it was a 28, but it was a different tram because they go to all different routes and lines, of course. We got a tram to the nearby, like it's pretty much part of Lisbon, but it's a separate part, like a town called Belém, which not long, like a 15-20 minute tram journey along the coast, because people told us that's where you get the best, we're going to talk about them again, pastel de natas. And they're actually called Pastel de Belém. And there is a particular shop, that is what the shop is called, Pastel de Belém, where there's normally a queue of tourists getting these little egg custard tart things. And I remember them being very good. They're a little bit more expensive here. I think they were like €1.10 or €1.20. They were very good. I don't know if they were the best. I'll talk about it later. I actually had my best one in Porto, so it wasn't even in Lisbon. But Belém's a cool place by the water. You can walk around. There's a big monument. You can see this really impressive bridge, which looks a bit like the Golden Gate Bridge in San Fran. And you can also go to the Belém Tower, which is worth a visit.
Yeah, it looks like a mini kind of castle tower.
It does,
really.
exactly.
It is beautiful. And if you want to be really authentic, you shouldn't call it Belém like Nick. It's Belém. Like, so their M's are said more like N's. So it's like Belém.
Ah, very good. Belém. And there's also a Belém in Brazil as well.
There is, right in the north. We haven't been there, but it is somewhere that we want to hit up when we next go to Brazil.
So we would recommend going to Belém, but also back in the main part of Lisbon, one of my favourite parts is walking around the streets of Alfama.
Yeah, this was a really cool place. So this is where Fado is traditionally from, right?
Fado, yes it is, but there'll be a lot of restaurants there that charge a lot of money for tourists to watch Fado music, which we'll talk about soon. But just walking around these little old ancient streets is a really beautiful part of the city.
And like, I would recommend when you're walking through to always look up, because you'll see old grannies in their windows watching everyone. It's a very rural place, you know, like cobbled streets and
Stunning.
really beautiful festival decorations everywhere, which I think they leave up all year actually in Alfama. But yeah, because what festival was it that had recently been when we arrived?
I don't know,
Did they
actually.
have a carnival? There was something.
I don't know about that. I know Christmas was coming, so like they were gearing up for Christmas.
I think I think it's a bit like carnival where they do a competition between the different districts. That's what it was. And so they had all their district decorations up, which was really nice. But yeah, when we were on our walking tour, our guide told us to always look up, and as he said it, there was a woman, like an old grandma, hanging out the window just watching us, and he said that these women are better than the police, you know, they see everything that's going on.
What did he say? Like intelligent surveillance technology, the best in the world. Old ladies, old grandmas. One thing I think I remember him saying was either like the night of Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, there's public areas in this little part of town with like tables and chairs, and like people, like old grannies, come out and they bring their cooking, and everyone as a community like sits outside in the streets. And that's like ultimate like Europe travel goals, to be involved in a place like that, like really old, ancient, historic place, beautiful, local people, families all coming together for a meal, like as a neighborhood, as a community. That would be really, really amazing.
That sounds lovely. But yeah, we would recommend going to Alfama. So it's famous for fado music, and fado music is, you know, like quite sad, triste, if you will. Yeah, very
mean?
Sad. It means sad in Portuguese.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yeah, it's just really sad music, but that's a traditional place to go. Well, I say traditional, but it's like the tourist place, because yeah, everything will be really expensive. The food that they sell, we've heard, we didn't go, so we can't, you know, say this definitely, but we've heard the food is low quality but a high price. So we would recommend going to a bar that we went to 2 times in the time that we were there, which was called
Tasco do Chica. Tasco do Chica, and I'm going to let Amy pronounce what part of the town it's in.
Well, it's just Barrio Alto. I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but yeah, so it's Alto. So I guess it's like the high neighborhood. I think that's what that means.
And that's a good place for nightlife. Lots of good little bars and stuff. But yeah, this place, what a cracking, like really small place. It opens at about 7 o'clock in the evening, so get there in good time to get a table. But you can sit, watch traditional Portuguese fado music. And I believe the origins are when like the Portuguese sailors used to be away for a long time, so their families are, you know, they're missing them and they're hoping they'll come back. That's one of the like origins of it. Sounds depressing, actually, but well, it's beautiful. It's a great way to spend an evening drinking and eating food. Here's a little clip for you guys.
So yeah, it is sad music, but I thought it was beautiful. Like, it was one of the best musical parts of this trip, I think. You know, sitting in this really authentic bar. The whole bar is made out of wood, and they're bringing you these tapas style foods. And was it the blood sausage in there that tasted really good?
The black pudding was out of this world.
And we had wine, and you know, we're all just having a nice little sing-song and just watching the musicians. It was just such a really nice, authentic experience. And it's something I really strongly recommend that you do. And we would really recommend this bar. We went on 2 separate nights. Both nights were brilliant. You know, service was good as far as I remember.
It was. That's actually my top recommendation for Lisbon. That was my favourite thing that we did.
Oh, that's nice.
The fado music. Check it out when you're there. Tasco do Chica is the name of the bar.
And fado music is spelled F-A-D-O. Fado. There you go. Top recommendations from What the Fo.
That's Lisbon. Done.
Lovely. So let's move on to the place that I can't pronounce. Nazare Beach. So as Nick said, this has the claim to the largest or the biggest wave that's been surfed in the world, and I can say there's some pretty big waves there. We hired a car to drive to Porto, and we stopped here for like a couple of hours on our way up, and we went to the beach. We were fully clothed because, you know, it was cold, and it was about sunset kind of time. We perfectly timed it for, you know, golden hour to get some great shots. And I mean, I walked close to the sea trying to get some good shots, and I think I looked behind me to look at Nick, and then Nick just screamed at me like, run. And I didn't realize that I'd got, like, the water moves super quick there. You know, normally waves do catch people out, but I couldn't believe how far I was from the edge of the water, and it got me, guys. It full on got me. I started to run back and I just couldn't outrun the water, and it completely soaked me. I got all of my trousers wet, my trainers were absolutely soaked, and it was freezing, so that didn't help.
That was bants. It was good fun. But, you know, despite Amy getting caught out by the wave, which, yeah, it's easy to do because they're big, strong waves there on the Atlantic Ocean, it was spectacular just sitting there watching the sunset, but watching these big waves. They weren't like the record-breaking waves that are sometimes there, but big waves, spectacular to watch. We were on the beach, but I remember looking up, there was some sort of restaurant or guest house or inn or hotel or something where you can watch from the top of the cliffs, which looked quite spectacular. But I really enjoyed being down on the beach, being really close to it. If you're in that area, it's something to see. It's quite special.
So after that, we made our way to Porto. We were staying in an Airbnb there, so I had to kind of turn up with drenched legs and be like, sorry, I had a spontaneous swim in the sea in my clothes.
First impressions, again, Porto, just a beautiful city. It's got a river running through it, spectacular bridge going over across the river. Streets are lovely. I would honestly say that Lisbon, I thought, looked more beautiful for sure. But again, walking around the old historic streets of Porto, more Portuguese tiles, my best ever pastel de nata, but I can't tell you where I got it from because we're on a walking tour and it's just where we stopped for a break.
But can you tell us why it was your favourite pastel?
No, I can't.
Because it was a year ago.
Taste, flavour, texture.
Do you like a crumbly pastry, a flaky pastry?
A bit, but not too much. But I think it was more the filling, like the custard filling. I just remember thinking that was the best one. But yeah, like again, first impressions of Porto, another beautiful, beautiful city. So time for another interview with João.
Jean.
We started by talking about an interesting story that João had. João.
I'm probably telling you wrong. I don't know. Don't ask me.
Okay. We will start with an interesting story that he had about where Portugal got its name from.
So, actually, I tell my version.
Okay. Let's do that.
So, yeah, what I read is that in the beginning, the Celts that were here gave this place the name Calais. And I've read that it comes from rock, but actually I've heard the version that it comes from Mother Nature too. So it depends on what is the meaning that you give to the original word Calais. But then it evolved to Portugal with the Romans. Then we became Christians, so it became Portugal, and in a county of the Kingdom of Leon. And then we became independent, Portugal. So where did it get its name from? Well, the city of Porto, of course.
Where we're sitting right now.
We're very proud of that, yeah.
As you should be. So can you tell us what you think the differences are between the north and the south of Portugal? So what can visitors expect?
The territory is very different, and that has an influence on the people and how it was influenced historically too. So in the north, between Douro and Minho, that we've always it's always been a different area in itself. It's a more mountainous region, more densely populated, but with smaller villages. So it's always been a harder place to conquer historically. And actually, normally the conquerors would come from the south, and it would be super easy. It's all plain. So that's a big difference. And it then, I think, influenced a lot of our culture. So like I said, we're much closer in the north of Portugal to northern Spain, so to Galicia, for instance, that we were actually part of the same territory with the Romans, than to the south of Portugal. That was a different territory.
Where's better then, north or south?
Well, I'm very biased about this.
That's why I asked.
I love this city. I love the north of Portugal, but, I couldn't imagine Portugal not being what it is. So we've always been one country. We're not a union of different kingdoms, and I think that's what makes it what it is. And that happens also for our ex-colonies. I can't imagine, you can't speak of Portugal and not speak of Brazil and Angola and Mozambique, and places like Goa. So this has an influence on who we are and who we became. But then again, of course, I think the people are much nicer in the north, much more friendly, and that's the huge difference that I find. However, this city is much grayer. It's much older than the city of Lisbon because they had that big earthquake. But I'm always amazed when I go into Lisbon and I find this amazing light that only they seem to have. But, I think it's funny and it's important to value the different aspects of the country. So that's more it. Yeah.
But you're leaning more to the south, I feel like.
No, I'm
south?
trying to be politically correct.
That was much more politically correct than before.
No, the thing is, I think Lisbon,
Is the best.
they have a hard time valuing the different parts of the territory. They feel like Lisbon is it.
Okay.
And that's what pisses me off. Okay.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
So I tend to value
Yeah.
all of what we are. Yeah.
So towards the start of the tour, you showed us a bar, and its nickname is Head Lice.
Hair lice.
Hair
yeah.
lice.
Yeah.
Can you explain why?
So basically, that's always been a main stopping place for students. And during our dictatorship, so the story I heard by the owner is that it would kind of be a safe place to speak about the system because people couldn't walk around in groups. They couldn't be in groups. It would be a way of probably, I don't know, it means that people were speaking. You don't want people to speak.
And
that's
that was
the
illegal
whole
at that time, right?
Yeah, it was illegal at that time. So they would gather there and they would speak about the regime that was happening. And anytime someone entered the cafe that the owner didn't know, he would scratch his head as a sign for the people to split up and kind of go back to their normal lives, go back to their studying or whatever they had to do. So it's kind of a resistance place, and it has a lot of plaques of students honoring the place, and it's probably the place that the students honor the most. It doesn't mean that it's still lived in that philosophy because it's got a bit more expensive than than it should in terms of beer. We have places where we buy beers for 50 cents.
Wow.
That is already €1 something, so
Okay.
money is a big thing for a student. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Now, I was quite surprised to hear that there's a link between Porto and Harry Potter. What is it?
Well, J.K. Rowling lived here, so that's the link, basically. I think she gathered some influences here from specific places, but the most obvious one, the two most obvious ones are the name of Salazar Slytherin. So Salazar was our dictator, so that's where she got that name. And also the robes of Hogwarts, they were inspired in the students of Porto. So a very old tradition within the university in Portugal that was used to standardize the students. So you can tell the muggles from the rest of them. Yeah, so.
Hasn't it got a link to the bookshop here? Didn't she go in there?
Yeah. She used different buildings as inspirations. The bookshop was one of them. The link they make is with the staircase of the bookshop that they say inspired the staircase of Hogwarts because it has all these weird angles. Yeah.
What's the bookshop called?
Lelu bookshop.
Because it's famous. It's known for being the most beautiful bookstore in the world.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's famous for that. I haven't been there in years, to be honest, because it's you have to pay to get in now.
Yeah, which is about €5.
Yeah, €5.
Yeah, and also
by the time you hear this, though, it could be more. You know.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh god,
Actually,
it's
quite
constantly increasing. Also to mention though, if you are paying €5 to get in, that's €5 discount on a book, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, as we've said, and has this place got anything to do with port wine?
Not much of it happens in Porto, actually. So we have the River Douro. Port wine comes from the Douro Valley. So it's 100 kilometers upstream Porto in a region that has a very specific climate. That is not the one we have here because there's a mountainous range that kind of keeps this Atlantic Ocean humidity and wind away from that. So it's a very dry region that helps make the full-bodied wines that you English love. So what happens in Porto is that what historically happened in Porto is that it would be shipped from here, because the wine is made in the Douro Valley, then it's shipped to Gaia, which is on the other side of the Douro, just in front of Porto. So that city has all the wine cellars. It's a cooler city because it's facing north, so it never has direct sunlight. And the only thing that happened in Porto would be shipped externally from our city. That's where the port used to be, on the northern bank of the river. Yeah.
And can you explain, for people that don't know, how is port different to traditional wine? They add brandy, is that right?
Originally, so the connection I make, originally the wine that would be shipped to England would be fortified with brandy by the English. And if you look to the city of Gaia, you see names like Croft, Taylors, Offley, Graham's, Churchill's, Cockburn's.
Very English names.
Yeah, they're not typical Portuguese names.
Not like yours.
Yeah, so they were the big men behind this industry. So it started off when there was taxes in France made the English try to get new places to get their wine, and so that's where they came to this region here. But the big difference is that port wine is actually made from the same grapes as a normal table wine, but a normal table wine ferments for 8 days, so all the sugar content transforms into alcohol, and in port wine on the third day, a very strong grape spirit, but it's not brandy anymore because it's an odorless grape spirit and flavorless. The idea is the flavor and the odor has to be from the wine, so it's just a way of stopping the process of fermentation on the third day and keeping the sugar content of the remaining 5 days of fermentations there. Okay, so making it very strong because the grape spirit is, I think, 77%. So it just kicks the alcohol level to 19 to 22% and keeping the sugar content. So it's a sweet, strong drink. It's great.
Nice. And finally, can you tell us, I think I'm saying this right, can you tell us what food is francesinha?
Francesinha. Yeah. So it's this humongous sandwich we have here. Look, it's for the brave, you know. It is a sandwich, but it has 5 or 6 different types of meat inside. So, you know, every cafe has their own version of the francesinha, but basically it will be sausage, smoked sausage, ham, some spicy ham, a beef, sometimes some pork, although that is a bit more rare. Then 2 loaves of breads, a lot of cheese on top, and a spicy sauce. So that would be the original francesinha, and you can have the optional egg and optional French fries too. So that, it's a big thing. I had one the other day. I couldn't have breakfast the day after. So
Really?
It's very
that
heavy
big?
stuff, but it's very good. So you should definitely go to one. If you
Well, I think
should
that's
try
what,
it next, yeah?
that's what we'll do now, because we're on a budget and we need to
It's
have lots of food
Like-
for not as
Well,
much
yeah,
money.
like you said, if that's going to keep us full for the next couple of days,
Yeah.
that's what travellers need.
it's very, very good food for a budget, yeah.
And that is exactly what we did after the tour. We went to go get a francesinha, which means little French girl.
But nothing little about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. It's just like a stacked sandwich full of like all the meat that he said. Obviously not good for vegetarians.
No.
But it's covered in this like cheese sauce with an egg on top. It is a good looking sandwich though, isn't it?
Yes, and it does taste amazing. I'm embarrassed to admit we shared one, but that was enough, wasn't it?
We had half each and we were so full after.
So 100% in Porto, look for the francesinha sandwich.
Yeah. And also he mentioned the Lisbon earthquake in that little interview. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of this. This is something you will learn about if you go on the free walking tour in Lisbon. But yeah, it's the Great Lisbon Earthquake, and it happened in 1755. So a really long time ago. But it had such a like catastrophic impact on Lisbon. They lost a lot of their buildings, and they actually lost about 60,000 people in Lisbon alone. It hit a lot of the surrounding areas as well, but it actually ended up turning into a tsunami as well. But part of the walking tour, I remember we went to a church and you could see all the damage because they didn't rebuild this church. But yeah, it was a really interesting part of the tour.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing to remember about Lisbon. A lot of that city has been rebuilt because, it was such a big, famous, devastating earthquake. But yeah, still some evidence of it there, which I'm glad that João mentioned it because we hadn't mentioned it before about Lisbon, but it's a big important part of the history there.
So just to round off Porto, we would definitely recommend going there, rent a car and drive up. It was a really nice drive. There's lots of toll roads though, so just be aware if you're on a short budget, then you're going to hit some toll roads. It's pretty much impossible to drive around Portugal and not hit a toll road. But yeah, Porto was a beautiful city. I'm definitely more of a Lisbon girl myself. Maybe it's because it is rebuilt. You have the tradition there, but it still looks clean and modern. Not that Porto doesn't look clean, but yeah, like he said, it's more of a grey city.
It is more grey, more old. I agree. I'm more of a Lisbon girl as well. That is my favourite out of the two. But Porto is great. And the good thing about Portugal, it's a fairly small country, so you can drive around all of it quite easily.
That was such a dad joke.
What are you talking about? So once we were done in Porto, we then drove back down south. So we were leaving the north of Portugal, going back down to Lisbon, where the whole time we were in Lisbon, the 2 times we were there, it was really nice because, we were able to meet family. We're 3 or 4 months into our trip at this point, but some family came out to meet us because Portugal is not too far from England. You can get fairly cheap flights. And we went back, and on the second time, we were with one of Amy's friends, Adam.
Yeah, we had a great time with Adam. So we were basically showing him all the stuff that we'd already done, going to the fado music, and we took him on a night out as well. I think that was in Barrio Alto.
Yeah, we ended up thinking a Cuban bar, was that right? Which
Yeah.
was a lot of fun.
And the great thing about the life in Portugal is that most people stand outside because the weather is normally really good. And like we said, it was cold when we were there, so we didn't see too much of it. But people tend to stand out on the street with their beer outside the bar, get some fresh air. It looks beautiful outside, so why not be outside with your friends? And they're just very sociable in that sense, aren't they?
Completely agree. They know how to have a good time, having great times in a beautiful place, drinking drinks out on the cobbled streets where there's music going, and it's brilliant. It almost looks like a movie set, really.
But yeah, there are lots of salsa Latin bars there, so if that's your thing, then you'll be able to find that while you're in Portugal, specifically Lisbon. But yeah, we had a great time with Adam, and somewhere new for us that we went with him was a place called Sintra, and this is outside of Lisbon. I think we were on a train for about 20 to 30 minutes to get there.
Maybe a little, something like that. Maybe a little bit longer, but it's easy to get to Sintra. And this place, it looks a bit like from a fairy tale. It looks a bit like from Shrek.
It does actually.
Do you know what I mean? There's beautiful countryside, lots of hills, but then there's castles on top of hills. And when you get the train to the main town, we just did a little walk to get into the main part of town. Again, walking around the beautiful cobbled streets, nice Portuguese tiles everywhere, some spectacular views, more pastel de natas, cup of tea, coffee. It was just very pleasant times.
And I don't know if you remember, a lot of the building were very pastel coloured.
Yeah.
Lots of pastel colours. It has a specific look, very colourful.
Yeah, it is. It's like a fairy tale, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have time, there's plenty to do in Lisbon, but if you've got the time, get the train out to Sintra. We would recommend it just for the day. Nothing more than that, I don't think.
Yeah, not even the day. I think it's just a couple of hours. You could go there one afternoon, something like that. It's not somewhere where I'm like, oh my God, you have to go.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's a lot of cool, say if you're in Portugal or Lisbon only for the weekend, then I'd say stay there because there's so much to do. You might as well see Lisbon properly than
actually, you know
go
what?
out.
Screw it. Forget about Sintra. Just stay in Lisbon.
No, if you're there for a week, then it's definitely worth visiting.
Yeah.
It's just,
exactly.
there wasn't anything majorly different to do. It's just a nice place to walk around.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But on the train back to Lisbon, we wanted to get Adam's opinion about what he thought of Lisbon and Sintra. Now, to explain, he might say bomb a lot or super bomb. you want to explain that little in-joke?
Yeah, well, bom means good in Portuguese, and it became like the phrase of the trip,
Because
like
there's
that
also
super bomb.
there's the beer Super Bock, isn't there?
Oh, see, I didn't even get the joke.
Ah, there you go. So you're laughing along. You didn't even get it.
Adam makes me laugh. I just laugh at him, really.
Speaking of that mug, let's hear from him now.
Yeah, a really nice city, very cultural, picturesque, very bomb. I've learned a bit of Portuguese as well. Yeah, the buildings are nice.
Do you like a tile?
I love a tile. Yeah, it's different to like other European cities I've been to.
Well, you said one of the squares looked like, did you say Poland?
Krakow. Yeah, bit Krakowy. Lovely waterfront.
Yeah,
I like a
you
waterfront.
really wanted to go see the waterfront,
Yeah.
didn't you?
Yeah, it's just a lot different. Everything's there. Food. I haven't talked about the food. 10 out of 10 food, I'd say. Yeah, it's just very underrated food, I'd say, because you don't really get much Portuguese food in the UK.
No, it's not like a big cuisine, is it? Like we love Indian food and that, but you don't regularly hear of Portuguese food.
No, exactly. What are the cod cakes called?
Bacalhau.
Yeah. I mean, probably one of the best things I've tasted.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So you would recommend someone come here for a long weekend?
Oh, yeah, for sure, as you would say. Lovely city. Go. It's bomb.
Very good.
Oh, Adam, I do miss you. We're going to be seeing him in like 5-6 days' time, and I cannot wait.
We did have a laugh, and I know you want more of Adam, and you're in luck. We've got a treat for you. So for this episode, we don't really have a game per se, because there's so much to talk about anyway. But we couldn't leave you without a little one that we played with Adam on the train. The 1 minute game.
Now, Adam, we've got a little game for you, okay? Now, I'm going to give you a place or a point of interest in Portugal, and you need to sum it up in one word, okay?
Okay.
So, yeah, you need to sum it up, and it needs to be really quick. You can't use the same word twice. So you need to be very descriptive, because I know you like your big words.
I love a big word.
And Nick, jump in when you got something. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Lisbon.
Cultural.
Pastel de nata.
Texture.
Okay. Sintra.
Picturesque.
Ooh.
The trams in Lisbon.
I mean, I didn't go on one, but fascinating.
Our apartment.
Clean.
The weather in Portugal.
Blue.
This train.
Quiet.
Superbock beer.
Heavy.
Bacalhau. Cod cakes.
Lovely.
Bomb.
Good.
Very good, well done. I'd say you passed the test.
Well done. That was all right.
Thank you.
I love his answer to how's the weather? Blue. No,
It's just blue.
didn't ask you about a colour.
Oh, that boy makes me laugh. Anyway, to wrap things up, we are going to hear from one more person on this episode, and it's a member of our family, specifically Nick's blood relation.
Well, yeah, we are married, so yours as well.
He is indeed. So, like we said earlier, the first people that came to visit us on this trip was Nick's uncle and auntie and his cousin, Emily. And yeah, they visited us for a few days in Lisbon, and it was really lovely, wasn't it?
Oh, we had a great time, and they were very generous by putting us up in the same hotel as them. And, they don't stay in crappy hotels, so they put us up in a nice hotel. So we do appreciate that, so thank you very much. And we just had a lovely time. But we wanted to get Graham's thoughts on Portugal, or Lisbon, really, because he's a bit of a European connoisseur these days.
He's a well-travelled man.
He does a few little Europe trips. He's got a house in Spain, so...
Oh, the enemy of Portugal, Spain.
How dare he? But that's why it's interesting to hear what he thinks of Lisbon.
This is my first time in Lisbon, and what's really struck me is how distinctive it is. I thought it was going to be a bit similar to Spain. Nothing like it at all. It's got its own character. Our guide today, Pedro, was saying they're the coolest people in Europe. Well, they are. This place is the coolest place in Europe.
Yeah.
I love it. And this has, in 48 hours, become my favourite place in Europe so far.
I agree.
High praise. So what is it about? How it looks aesthetically pleasing, or just the culture, or the food, or what is it? Everything.
It's actually all of those things. As a city, it's kind of quite compact, and there's the 4 main districts, and we've walked those within an hour and a half, really. Yeah, there's the touristy bars where you're paying a little bit over the odds and what have you, but where you're taking this interview at the moment, I mean, this is heaven for me. You know, here we are in a bar where they're doing fado music, all the football scarves up, the food, the beer. It's just real Portuguese, and I love it.
Oh, I really love that, because that's exactly how I feel. I just think it's such a cool city, great food, great wine. I mean, I don't drink beer, so I don't know how good the beer is, but it's just a really cool place, and I want to live there really bad.
High praise from Graham there, and very well said. Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that he said, really. Coolest people in Europe, apparently. That is high praise. I might have to agree, although people in Copenhagen are cool.
That's true. Yeah, they are cool, but I mean, I want to live in Lisbon more. So let's, talk about our final thoughts of Portugal. Like you said, I'll go more into the south. So it's the south of Portugal. When I was younger, we used to fly into Faro Airport, and that was going into the Algarve. It's a really big tourist area for like summer holidays. A lot of people from the UK go there, but it's just so beautiful. And I remember one of our tour guides in the interview said that Spain has better weather. It's more sunny, it's not as dark, but I disagree. From when I was younger, I remember always getting a much better tan in Portugal, so that was making it higher on my list. I loved my holidays in Portugal. We used to go to a place called Lule. It's a really nice rural place. If you've got a hired car, you can drive around. There's some great beaches. You can have your own house in the mountains, far away from everyone else. So yeah, I always used to love my childhood holidays there, and so I would recommend the south as well. I think it's something that we need to do as adults, isn't it? Go on holiday there.
Yeah, I'd like to go one day, absolutely. But from what I've heard, there's just lots of different little beachside towns where you can go to, like loads of water sports activities, everything you'd associate with a proper summer holiday. So Portugal's got a bit of everything, hasn't it, really, apart from maybe snowy mountains where you can go skiing. But you can go there in the winter like we did, and in the summer especially. And yeah, I would like to go back to Portugal in the summer.
Now, we need to mark this out of 10. So what's your score out of 10 for culture, Nick?
I was thinking 10, but I'm going to go 9, only because it's great culture. I love it. A lot of history. But if I'm comparing it to like Brazil for me is like Portugal, but on another level. So I can't give Portugal 10, but I'll give it 9 out of 10.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's exactly what I was going to say. 9 out of 10. So out of price, out of 10, I'm going to say it's like a 7 to 8 out of 10, I think. I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10 because, it's not the cheapest place we've ever been. But
yeah, it's still Europe.
It's still Europe. So, their currency is euros. I'm not sure if we've said that yet. But it's a decent price. It's not shockingly expensive like some places in Europe, like Paris, for example. But, it's a decent price for what you're getting. And I think you always get good quality food and drink. So it's worth the money.
Yeah, no, I think Portugal is very good value. Bearing in mind we're in Western Europe, it's not on the same level as the UK, France, Germany, especially all the Scandinavian countries. It's way cheaper. You can get big portions of food for a good price. And again, it's not the cheapest, like you said. Of course it's not. It's still Europe. But actually for what you get, I'm going to go, again, 9 out of 10.
Wow, okay, that's quite different to my score.
Yes.
And finally, the last category is nature. 10 out... Oh, I was going to say out of 10.
Last nature. 10 out of 10.
I'm not going to give it a 10 because it's more of like a city place. It has got great nature, like we said, on the beach with the great waves and all of that. But, it's not a massive place you'd go for animals or...
Yeah,
I don't know,
agreed.
But I think like they've got some really good beaches there, but we haven't really experienced them as adults, so I'm not sure how to judge that. But yeah, I'd go for a 7 out of 10 for nature because if you're a traveller for nature, it's not somewhere I would recommend quickly.
I agree for the same reasons, so I won't repeat what you said, but 7 out of 10 for nature.
There we go. Right, so what's next on What the Faux Travel podcast, Nick?
Well, we spoke about this before we recorded. We're not sure. I think, you know what, we can say different things, but I think it's going to be the third and final installment of our long-term travel episode when we're home, the trip's over, talking about what we liked, what we didn't like, what we do differently, blah, 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 blah. I think that'll be next. But what do you think?
I don't think that will be next because I think we need more time to process us getting home before we record.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
I think the next mini episode is going to be Day of the Dead, which was an incredible festival that we went to that I'd highly recommend. And yeah, we'll go into detail of how you can do that in a traditional way, where you can go to the cemeteries, you can talk to the families and understand the traditions. You know, they all sit around the grave drinking coffee. Why is that? We will explain it in that episode. We'll also talk about the tourist side, where you can go to the parade in Mexico City, which is from the famous James Bond Spectre film. It's the first scene where he's walking through the streets and everybody's got, you know, their face painted as skulls, calaveras. So, yeah.
Oh, a Day of the Dead episode will be fascinating. It was fascinating. But you guys are going to know, whatever episode we end up doing, that will tell you who is in charge of this podcast.
Well, that's me. So
We'll see. So we'll see you next time, guys. Please remember, in the meantime, you can support us in the usual ways. Patreon, that's the big one that keeps us going. It enables us to keep going to different places. It pays for equipment. It means the show can keep going. Patreon's a big one, and you guys get rewards for signing up as a patron. So you're not just paying us and getting nothing back. And we're on YouTube, remember. We're not just a podcast. You can watch all of these adventures, but not the Portugal one because we didn't film it.
we had a little break then.
We took a break then, but you can see our round the world trip on YouTube. And if you go to our website, you can find all our social medias as well as our shop, where you can buy cool merchandise. And again, it supports the show and it keeps us going.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Don't forget, you can get in touch with the show. You can email us at whatthefauxpodcast@gmail.com. We are also on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And we are also on Patreon. For more information on all those things, you can go to our website at www.whatthefauxtravelpodcast.com.